Making renewable energy happen. Nedbank CIB.
Shopping malls are significant energy users due to the sheer size of their built footprint and their need to create a comfortable environment for customers, most often by means of extensive air conditioning and lighting. In recent years, however, there have been encouraging moves by the owners of many of the country's large shopping malls to invest in meeting their own energy requirements and those of their tenants by means of renewable energy installations. In 2016, ATTAC, owners of the recently opened Mall of Africa in Waterfall, committed to invest over 76 million rand into the installation of rooftop solar panels, aimed at substantially reducing and eventually removing the mall's dependence on the national electricity grid. As long-standing finance partners with ATTAC and primary funders of the Mall of Africa development, Nedbank was pleased to be given the opportunity to provide 62 million rand of the funding required for this important renewable energy installation. The solar installation is a very positive sustainability move on many levels. First and foremost, by generating energy from renewable sources to meet much, if not all, of its own power needs, Mall of Africa will significantly reduce its overall carbon footprint. The installation is also set to provide a worthwhile boost to Mall of Africa's bottom line. Not only will the self-generated power mean that the mall is not exposed to future electricity increases, the renewable energy it generates will be sold on to tenants. It is anticipated that the total value of the electricity generated will start at around 8 million rand in the first year, and that this figure will grow annually to approximately 34 million rand by year 20. The use of solar power to deliver the energy needs of Mall of Africa is an outstanding example of the many types of value that a sustainability-driven approach to power generation offers stakeholders. We chatted to Michael Clampett, Head of Asset and Property Management Retail at ATTAC, about this installation.
What you see is 15,080 solar panels, not just a C, so that's the biggest private solar installation in South Africa. It currently generates about 4.75 megawatts of energy, which is something to be proud of. I think if you look at a normal mall, the installations are between 1 megawatt to 1.5 megawatts. Energy efficiency goes a lot further than really just solar panels and the energy they provide. In constructing this mall, we were actually very efficient in doing that. A lot of planning went into designing this mall, the way that we build it, and a good example will be we crushed a lot of the stone that actually came out of the excavation process, and we used that to build all the tar roads around Waterfall City. So we didn't have to ship in any stone to build the roads. Also, in terms of looking to expand the mall in future, what you do as a normal landlord is you would have to knock down some malls, you would have to excavate new areas and then extend the mall. We've actually designed the mall that if we want to in future increase this footprint, it's going to be very easy, it's not going to cost us a lot of money, it's going to be very efficient to do that. And I think so there's a lot of savings and efficiencies that are not always just related to energy. The cost of installing panels like these are becoming relevant in South African context because of the price we currently pay for electricity. I think it was 10 years ago it wouldn't be feasible, but comparable to your quoted price from your local municipality, generating your own power isn't that expensive anymore. If we look at some other features away from the solar panels, we do the things that a lot of the prudent landlords do these days. We've installed very smart escalators, they don't operate when no one's on them. We harvest rainwater. We've gone a step further. We don't just harvest the rainwater, we actually filter that water so that we can use them for a lot more purposes than just flushing toilets. I think solar makes a lot of sense in South Africa. If you look at the penetration rate of the sun in South Africa, I think we are the second highest rated country in the world. So we've got abundant sun, why not utilize it? In terms of the technology, it's also a very cost-effective technology. If you look at other energy saving or energy creation type of technologies, currently, there's a lot of talk about waste to energy technology. If you compare that to solar, that's still relatively expensive, and I think we need time for that to develop before that can be utilized. solar makes a lot of sense if you look at your input cost versus the capacity to generate in future. In terms of other energy sources, I'm not an expert, and I can mention that currently we are in negotiations with Eskom to get this plant commissioned. Even though it's on our roof and it does work, we haven't been able to actually get the approval to commission the site. It's administratively very burdensome process. Further than that, I don't have any other comment. At peak times, this plant can supply us with half our energy capacity or need at a specific time. Obviously, if you look at the total trading time of the mall trades when the sun isn't always shining, so it doesn't provide 50% of the total usage, but at its peak it can provide 50% of the usage at that specific time. I think there are a couple of benefits, although they wouldn't necessarily feel it if you maybe take a community view. If we commission a plant like this, we take energy out of the grid, potentially that allows for more distribution to other parts of the country, maybe your suburb, your other shopping centre, your hospital. So we're lessening the burden on an infrastructure currently, and I think there's an indirect benefit to the community and the consumer by doing that. If you talk about sustainability, you know, we're out of the load shedding phase, and I'm very happy for that. But if you look at what this can do, should this whole community be shut down due to load shedding or some other electrical failure, we will be able to look after ourselves, we will be able to come and shop here, maybe come and have dinner, come and have lunch. So there's an indirect benefit to the consumer because the infrastructure will still be operating in a time where necessary services might not be available. So we take a long-term view. When we invested here, we invested a lot of money if you look at the initial investment. But because of the scale, we can be very efficient. So instead of putting down smaller water tanks, we could put down massive water tanks. And I want to use the example a while ago when the water in Midrand ran out there was a disruption in the water supply. But Mall of Africa was still operational because we could utilize our water tanks because we had sufficient infrastructure. So the benefit to us as a TAC is we have assets that are sustainable. They can keep operating even when really critical services cannot be supplied from outside, and it really takes us to a situation where we are in control of our own destiny. I think firstly it's an understanding of the product. So as a first step, what we did is we educated ourselves really well in understanding solar. That de-risked the investment for us to a certain extent because of the newness and the lucrative of the industry. There were a lot of new entrants. It meant that we could sift through them and really understand what they were offering, and in the end based our decision on merit and what we understood solar energy to be. From a layman's perspective, and I'm not an engineer, basically what the solar panels do is they absorb some of the sunlight. That creates a chemical reaction within the silicone panels, and that chemical reaction is then relayed to inverters that creates the energy. So these are the inverters that physically turn it into energy. So there's a chemical reaction within the panel itself, but then the conversion to actual usable energy happens here. We've got 15,080 panels linked, and they are linked 6 at a time to an inverter. So we should just divide 15,000 by 6 and we'll get the answer. They are operational, they're not commissioned.
They're not commissioned.
So from a technical point of view, everything works. We're just not feeding power to the mall yet. I think what's important to note is that I don't think we're trying to get away from Eskom. I think we're trying to just be in control of our destiny. I think if Eskom provide electricity that is still competitive and cheap, for pure commercial and business reasons, we will keep being a user. But we are trying to create an environment where we are sustainable when we cannot rely on them, or when something happens on their side that's out of our control. And that's where you look at solar generators, waste to energy technologies to bulk up that supply when it's not necessarily coming from a main supplier like Eskom.
It's not just from a solar energy perspective that Mall of Africa is constructed in an environmentally friendly manner. Michael took us on a guided tour explaining the advantages that both tenants and the environment enjoy thanks to this green savvy mall.
So up here what we see is a lot of the aircon plant, so compressors, circulating and cooling air and then pushing it back into the system. If you look at Mall of Africa, the total trade area is 130,000 square meters. If you equate that to a normal 2-bedroom house, that's probably about 400 of them. The total built area of Mall of Africa is probably about 3 times that. So in total we've built 500,000 square meters to accommodate not just the shopping area, but of course all this plant, parking areas and the rest. So this is the ETFE roof. It's a very special plastic-based material. It's very durable, and what it is actually a cushioning system. So we control the pressurization of the cushioning, and that then controls the ambient temperature inside the mall. This is the biggest ETFE installation in South Africa. When it comes to regulation, we use a building management system. So the building management system will then control the airflow. It has measure points all over the mall. So as soon as colder air is not necessary in a certain section, it just stops delivering colder air to that section. I think the biggest selling point of Mall of Africa is firstly that it's new. Because it was the largest mall built in a single phase, we had a lot of design advantages. We could design the mall in a very efficient way from a customer point of view. You know, the way we walk, the way you park, how do you access tenants. And we also used unique design features for South Africa. I mean, they use them overseas. So the shopfronts are very high. We've got we got the tenants on board to design us really unique shops, or especially shopfronts. But what we are busy doing here is we're actually building a city. We are building Waterfall City. And if you look at the location, it is in the middle of Gauteng. It's on the confluence of the N3 and the N1, which are the 2 busiest highways in South Africa. And it's our view that that location, that central location, will actually make Mall of Africa the preferred destination within Gauteng. So for retailers, it's actually an easy sell. If you want to open a store, especially new entrants into our market, overseas guys, we tell them, if you put it down in the center of Gauteng, you service both Pretoria and Johannesburg, and I think that story resonates with them. What we did, and this is strategic, I think if you look at market information, our rentals are probably about 15% below what traditional malls the size of Mall of Africa are. So it was our intention to make sure that a lot of our retailers survive the first 24 months, which usually in a new mall scenario is very critical, because you have to change people's patterns, right? We have to change the consumer's pattern, and he has to come to Mall of Africa instead of the mall he went to previously. So we use that as a strategy, and we say, you know what, in future when we do renewals, we'll be in a position to then potentially up the rental, but then at least we've got a good case to say, you know, you're sustainable, you're trading well. So the total all-in cost for Mall of Africa was just under 3.8 billion rand. Well, it goes back to the conversation we had earlier about efficiency in planning. So, you know, during the design phase already, a lot of planning went into when you excavate, what do you do with the soil? What do you do with the rocks? Do you have to transfer the 100 kilometers or not? So, I mean, there was a lot of planning that went into controlling that cost in the end. And I think it's a very successful project. If you look at the opening, when the mall opened, it was valued at 4.8 billion rand. So there was an immediate development profit realized for shareholders. I look after a portfolio of shopping malls or retail assets, so it is my job to make sure that they are sustainable in the long term, both from an operating point of view, but also that the tenants in there trade well, that people have a great experience when they come there. So we kind of look at expanding malls, maybe changing them, bringing in entertainment, really giving the consumer what they want. I think the finance minister part, South Africa is a shopping crazy country. I think we have the 6th largest percentage of shopping mall space per capita in the world. So there's a lot of shopping malls or shopping area in South Africa. I think what could happen is the consumer is going to be under severe pressure in the future. We'll have to wait for things to shake out and see where that goes. And I'm talking specifically about interest rates, and I'm talking about inflation. As soon as the consumer has less to spend, I think it will have an impact on shopping malls. but then the quality of your shopping mall is going to be very important. So a shopping mall like Mall of Africa, it is my expectation that it will continue to do well. It will continue to attract great tenants, but I think more marginal shopping malls might see a big exodus of customers, and then tenants, which might put a lot of pressure on that industry. The key difference between a major shopping mall and potentially a successful one in future and smaller, more marginal ones is the range that your tenants offer. If I can use an example of maybe a Woolworths, if you have a Woolworths that's 8,000 square meters big and has got all the lines, the country roads, treneries, massive food offering, and you compare that to maybe a smaller shopping center where the Woolies is much smaller, it doesn't carry all the lines, I think the consumer will be pulled towards the bigger offering. And by default, your smaller mall with tenants with smaller offerings might suffer in future. The design is wonderful in terms of the natural light, and I think within the mall itself, it creates a wonderful feel, lots of space, and of course you cut down a lot on your lighting or energy usage for lighting. The downside of a lot of natural light or skylights is of course air conditioning. So there's a lot of direct penetration from the sun. So during the design phase we had to balance that. Balance the needs between energy usage, how much light, and I think we actually found a very good balance here. Obviously the opening day was crazy, everyone saw that all over the news. And since that first month we've had really nice support from the public. When December came around, that exceeded our expectations completely. So after December we sat down and we said, you know, this is a good product, it is supported by the community, and we're very happy with where it trades currently. So this is basically a massive fridge. Yeah. So it's a chiller plant, takes water, cools it, freezes it actually overnight, and then during the day distributes that cold air that flows over the chilled water or ice water into the system. Because what you can do is you use energy in the night when it's cheap and there's no other demand to freeze the water. And then during the day when the demand for energy is high, then you use the chilled water or the frozen water to distribute the air over. So currently there are between 5,000 and 5,500 people on site every day. So those are both our service providers and then obviously the employees within the retailers and their service providers. During construction phase it's difficult to say because there's different compartments, you know, there's the excavation process, the groundworks, then the top structure. But at the peak, just before opening, we had 14,000 people on site per day. So what we've done is with the design, there's a tunnel running from west to east underneath Mall of Africa, and that tunnel is used for all deliveries and all removal of waste, etc. So that means that there's no interface with the public. If you look at where our generators sit, so a lot of our generators sits in that tunnel for exactly that reason. It's we can control the fumes leaving from there. So the tunnel is one way, runs from west to east, and then all the tenant service areas are down here. The day before opening, we realized that there might have been something the architects overlooked, but you can excuse them for a mall of the size. So there was a water main situated above a speed bump, and a massive truck came, and as he went over the bump it was just high enough to drive into the water main. But you can imagine it's a one-way tunnel, right? So we had to stop everyone, figure out a way to lift the main by 50 centimeters. We've got a company that sorts the waste for us. Then once it's sorted into different types of waste, we send it off to a recycling plant, and then obviously we receive a rebate for that. Yeah, so our professional team and the architects, they did a couple of trips overseas to just try and get some inspiration from other flagship malls. And if you've been to London and Westfield, you'll realize that something feels familiar when you walk around Mall of Africa, and that is sort of the very high shop fronts, the really impressive design of the shop fronts. And a lot of that wasn't just us, we also had to get our tenants on board, right? So we had to convince them during the leasing process, you know, this is our vision, this is the mall we want to build, but can you also come to the party and really design a great shop front for us? And there are great examples here. This doesn't feel like a normal mall, right? It's wonderful with the trees, you know, it gives you the feeling of that, the stills you've seen in paintings, on nature shows. And what we can also do with the ETFE roof is during the night, we can change the color of the roof. It can be anything, but you know, at 6 o'clock tonight we can give it an amber feel, and it can feel like sunset within the mall with the trees in the background. I think that's wonderful. So it's an international technology. The ETFE roof here is the biggest installation in South Africa. It's a, for lack of a better word, a very, very hard plastic and a very durable type of plastic or polymer. And so we chose it more for its durability, but also for the aesthetic effect that we could do with it. It's a cushioning system, so we can control the air pressure within control, and that once again allows us, depending on the ambient temperature and the pressure within the mall, we can control that by deflating and inflating the cushions. The mall was designed that there's runoff areas and we collect the water in those runoff areas. What we've done here is gone a step further, and we've also filtered to a large extent that grey water, and that allows us to use it. It's definitely not potable water, but you can maximize the use out of the water if you filter it. I think it's very important to not be too idealistic or focus on one group. So it's my view that you have to cater for everyone, and you have to give everyone a reason to come to the mall. Otherwise, you know, you might be too focused on one specific group, and after you've lost them, you don't have a market to turn to. So what we've done at Mall of Africa is we've tried to cater for everyone, but we've also excited. So we've included a couple of new tenants. So first-time stores in South Africa opened here. Something like Cotton On was the biggest one in South Africa, opened with Mall of Africa. So, you know, it's a mix between new, existing, but also maybe changing it up a little bit to give the consumer something new to come to. ATTAC has appointed the services of Werner Mulder as the head of sustainability, and ATTAC sees sustainability as a major component of our business going forward. Werner is in charge of looking not just at Mall of Africa, but at all the shopping centres we own, as well as the office buildings that we own. Currently we are building the PwC head office in Waterfall City in the Gauteng area. So Werner is involved in terms of the design to make sure that going forward we are very efficient in terms of our energy usage, our water usage, and not just efficient, but also making sure that we secure the supply thereof in future. I'm not a Nedbank representative. They were the funders of Mall of Africa, and we were very, very happy that they were our partners on this magnificent project. And I think from their point of view, there's a lot to be gained, and I think a lot of us need to realize that going green is not just a catchphrase. It's something that we really need to invest in and we really need to understand. And I think them as partners also put that spotlight for us in the design of Mall of Africa, and we're very happy for it.